It's time to continue our journey through Resident Evil on the Steam Deck. Last time we covered 0 and Remake. We already made videos for 4 and its remakes, and now we're going into the PS360 generation of titles. So let's dive into how I've gotten Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6 to run on the original Steam Deck. For a brief summary, these were the two games that expanded upon the more action-oriented gameplay Resident Evil 4 introduced on the PS2, and they're not exactly high on the list of loved titles of the series. While I really liked 5, many die-hard fans hate how it and 6 took the series too far in the action movie direction and away from the horror aspect. Anyways, this won't be a long video as these two games play extremely well on the Steam Deck. I didn't encounter any visual glitches this time like we got in Resident Evil 0, and the cinematics and FMVs seem to be just fine with normal Linux. No need to use Proton. Let's begin with Resident Evil 5. The Steam page says it's incompatible, but it's more accurate to say that it used to be incompatible. Until about a year ago, RE5 required Gaming for Windows Live to be installed on your computer to run, just like how Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition used to. But it's since been patched to no longer require that and will launch fine on the deck. It does take a good bit of time to do its initial boot, but it'll eventually get there. The only oddity I found is that when you first boot up 5, it'll default to its keyboard control mode. Despite saying press any key to continue on the title screen, you actually need to hit the start button to enable controller mode and get to the main menu. Outside of that, I've never had any issues with the game. The settings I use is what the game just sort of defaulted to with a couple changes. Everything was already on high, so I enabled anti-aliasing and putting the frame rate on variable instead of locking it to 60 or 30. I will admit the first time I booted up in the early bits of Chapter 1, it kind of froze a couple times when Chris and Sheva went out into the initial big wave-based room, but upon restarting the game, I have yet to have any other issues in that room or others. The game just loads in, locks itself at 60 FPS, and is basically perfect. I've seen a couple little hiccups to 58 here and there, but otherwise it looks and plays very well. Even in the areas with more effects going on, like the busy fire effects of the furnace when fighting the Ouroboros test subject. Next up is Resident Evil 6, which is labeled as verified for the Steam Deck, and it is. The testing I did was mostly in Leon and Chris's campaigns. I mostly wanted to see if there would be any frame drops during the congested zombie-filled city and the giant BOW that Chris fights in his second chapter. With similar settings to what I did in 5, mostly with things on high, the FPS set to variable and anti-aliasing turned on, the game plays great. I got a perfect 60 FPS in everything I did. And to be honest, this is expected. I didn't think these games would struggle on the Steam Deck, but at the same time, there were those weird little Windows Live issues with 5 until they patched it last year. So it's good to know that they can both be played without issue. And with that, let's go into battery life. Both of these games get a pretty decent amount of battery time, but they're both different. When playing Resident Evil 5, you'll get about 4 to 4.5 hours, while 6 will net you about 3 hours. And these tests were based on online capable campaign sessions. Let's wrap up. Would I recommend these games to Steam Deck users? Absolutely. They might not be the most widely loved games of the franchise, but they play fantastic on Valve's PC handheld, and you barely have to do a thing to get them running perfectly. They're a great addition to anyone's library of Resident Evil games on the deck. And that's all I have for you today. I'll be back soon with more handheld PC performance and reviews. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.